We'll try to review a little of what we have discussed. Basically, we talked about um, analysis of visual data the last time, and I also gave a homework for each group where I asked everyone to each group to identify the data that they will need and also to present in this session how they plan to use the data so that they can come up with the solution to the problem. Okay, so it's like the formula. What formula are they going to use? And also what variables should be in play. So we will start with Team ICEE. Um, so Cherry Ann, Eureka, and Edsil, you can unmute your mics and maybe talk about what data you will be needing for your study, which is titled "The Study on the Effect of the Work from Home Setup on Interior Design in the Context of Work Productivity During the Pandemic." So anyone? I see Cherry Ann here.
Hello, sir. Medyo noisy ko ron, pero I'm so sorry na lang
Okay,
daan.
no problem.
Okay, I can actually share screen.
Yeah, I have. Does that mean I need to stop first
Ay,
sharing? Okay.
ah, for the, for a while. Can everyone see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay, so
Yes.
for Team ICEE or Team IC, our topic or title is a study on the effect of the work from home setup on interior design in the context of work productivity during the pandemic. So meaning COVID-19. So to start, we would have to gather data by disseminating survey or questionnaires to a certain group. So what data do we intend to uh, collect from this? So first, professionals affected by work from home setup during pandemic. Now, this list is to determine the top professions who were affected the most during this new setup. We also intend to gather information or personal information on their background, such as age, gender, marital status, home environment, or companions. Now, this is to somewhat systematically graph percentage of the participants of this study so that we are able to determine the majority of each data that were affected by the new work from home setup. We also plan to create a list or gather data with the professionals' living condition were affected by the new setup. Now, this is to analyze and determine the probable cause of difficulties in terms of home location and condition. And lastly, we intend also to gather data on difficulties or problems that these professionals encountered that causes unproductivity in the new setup. Now, this is to identify and categorize the common difficulties encountered by professionals during this time. Now, with this, we intend to further analyze the data to realize the given research.
Okay. So that's it, no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Um, so as I understand it, first you're going to shortlist
Ay,
the type of professionals. You're going to make a shortlist. Is that correct?
yes, sir.
So how do you plan to shortlist the type of professionals?
I think through
Mm, I think that this is a bit difficult I think that the shortlisting can be done privately, like it's actually part of your limitations already. Like you focus only on this type of professionals, because if you're going to shortlist the type of professionals, therefore you will have to fill out questionnaires on all types of professions, and then select from them who has the conditions appropriate for this type of study, and so you choose and then remove the rest. So that requires initial survey, but then after that you have to do another survey uh, with this as your already your sample or your the participants. So my advice, just to make this study more feasible, is that you already shortlist the type of professionals that you want to study. So you already limit. So, and the limitation, you can make your own reason why you choose to limit this. For example, they are more accessible to you or to your group members, especially during this pandemic, etc. No? So that's my advice for the first. And then for the second, I think this is this is normally this is normal. No, age, gender, marital status. But then, will that really matter? Well, I mean, to know the age, does that have a bearing on the solution of your problem? Or to know the marital status?
Uh,
So,
this is just the basic information, sir. So aside from this, we also intend to more or less try to get a glimpse of their home environment. So are they in an urban community, in a rural community? So
uh-huh.
also by identifying their companions, are they with family, are they with housemates, so stuff like that, sir, which we believe will also contribute by to this study.
Okay. But so these are just peripheral, no?
Yes, sir.
What you really need to know is, of course, their living conditions, and then the problems that they encounter, and then try to correlate the living conditions with the problems, whether there's a correlation. Um, but then when you say living condition, you again need to uh, limit your questions on which particular aspect of living conditions. So whether you're talking about the room or desk setup or anything, no? Because otherwise it can be so many, so many. So although it's like the shortlisting again. No? So you try to be as comprehensive, but then you don't need to go into the process of shortlisting this time the living conditions. Or actually, there's another way to get this data based on the difficulties. Okay, um, you make them ask you ask them about their difficulty and probably the reason for it, and then you tabulate, no? And then which one has the same reasons. So okay, so this is a very straightforward study. So very good. No? Although, well, this is not really the ideal outline or flowchart, but I might suggest how it should be done later. Okay,
Okay. Okay, sir.
very good. Let's go to the next group. The next group is presenting now. I have to look at my slides. The Global Palawenyo Architects, their study is a study on the determinants of the surviving small resto bars amidst the pandemic in the context of Puerto Princesa. So Jefferson, Cindy, and Nikki, are you around? Hello, Jefferson. Where are you? Nikki, are you here? Change layout, tiled. I can see everyone. Nikki is here. What about Cindy?
Sir?
Yes, so what about your study? Who's going to present?
Wait for a while, sir.
Okay,
Sir, is it okay we could present about later, sir, because my file won't open?
okay, so I'll
I'm
give
still
you
trying to open it.
time. Let's go to Asia Architects for RG, Anna,
Thank
Ida,
you.
and Noe. A study on the link of public perception on the architectural profession and the actual practice in the context of Puerto Princesa,
Hello, sir.
Palawan.
Good evening.
Yes, Noe. Evening. So, what about your study? What data will you need and how do you intend to use those data
Uh, uh, uh,
to solve your problem?
hmm.
Hello? It's really very strange to be talking to pictures. Noe, are you still there?
Hello, sir.
Yes. Are you ready? Or are
Ayun
you
nga.
presenting? Are you the one presenting?
Ano, wala na connection.
Ano, wala ang connection.
Sabi, uy, natakot na.
Ana is showing somebody else.
Hello, sir.
RG, yes.
Yes. So, on behalf of the, Asia Architect, allow me to present our presentation for this
Yes.
entire screen for a while, sir.
Yeah. Are you showing a slide?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Nakikita po ba, sir?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so, good evening, everyone. Our post title is A Study on the Link of Public Perception on the Architectural Profession and the Actual Practice in the Context of Puerto Princesa, Palawan, wherein we need to list the tasks, or we are asked to list the tasks need for this study and explain how this data can help to answer the research problem. So the problem question is based on the growing number of projects handled by non-architects, how does the public perceive the practice of the architectural profession in Puerto Princesa? So in this table, we establish study objectives in order to identify the data needed and the reason why do we need this data. So first, number one study objective is to identify an institution that offers the architectural program in Puerto Princesa, Palawan. So the data needed is the name of the school, when it was established, and the accreditation status of the particular school. The reason why do we need this, because in order to prove that the community has an architectural education that is concerned with producing graduates with comprehensive knowledge, appropriate skills, and a professional attitude in the practice of architecture that promotes architectural careers. Second objective is to identify an organization structure of architects in Puerto Princesa, Palawan. The data needed is the name of organization, when it was established, the members, expertise, services offered, and professional fees they implemented, and of course the community involvement of these architects, of this organization in the community. The reason is to show that the community has an appropriate organization structure that promotes architectural practices and principles, establish higher standards of ethical conduct and professional excellence in the architectural services, and coordinate with local, national, and international organizations in the field of architecture. Third is to know city government's regulation for obtaining building permits. The data needed is the building permit requirements, the processes, and its procedures. So the reason is to verify the inclusion of the architectural permit in the city government as a prerequisite in the processing of building permit and occupancy permit is enforced. Fourth, to identify projects constructed in Puerto Princesa signed, planned, and designed by a non-architects. List data needed is the list of projects constructed, ongoing, and on process. The reason is to show evidence that a non-architect has practiced and continues to practice the architectural profession in the community. Last, to identify legal documents protecting the profession of architects in the country. Data needed is a Republic Act or any related legal documents. The reason is to emphasize an act regulating the practice of architecture in the Philippines. That's all, sir.
Okay, so we can really simplify this, but very good for being very thorough. But I think that out of 5 that you presented, only 1 is necessary, and then you lack another one. Why? Why do I say that? Because when we come up with, remember the exercise I told you on how to make the how to determine the topic. What we're actually doing is that we were establishing the raison d'être, no? Or the reason for conducting the study. So we mentioned that in your case, we mentioned that actually we already mentioned this. We already mentioned that there is a school, there are schools, there are educational, there's architectural education, and then there are professional organizations, architectural organizations, and then there is the building process, etc. And then there is also the law, and yet there are still projects which are signed and sealed by non-architects. So we already established all of those. So that's why you don't need to research again for those, because you already did that. No? In doing the rationale, you actually do a little research like what you just did here. But after already identifying your problem, you go now to the next step. You do another research, which is the research proper. In this case, the important data that you're trying to gather is to identify the projects constructed and designed, signed and planned and designed by non-architects. Okay, what you missed out is the data on the perception of people, because that's what we're supposed to. That's what we're supposed to analyze. No, in fact, that's the question. No, what is the perception of the people? So, how is it? My first question about the number 4 is that to what extent do you identify the projects? No, because if you go to OBO and then assuming that you're allowed to go over their archives, are you going to go over all the files, or how do you limit that? No, or are you going to focus only on the last few years, or are you only going to focus on certain types of projects? So because you cannot handle the volume of data that will be available to you, so you have to specify.
Specify that.
And then, so what you lack here is the questions, the survey that you will be needing, or the opinions, no, or the perception of people. But then again, you have to identify who are you going to ask. So is it any age level, from kids to very old people, or do you include the blue-collar workers or only white-collar workers? Male, female, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter. So these are the things, no? And then what do you need to get from them? What data do you need to get from them? So what opinion, what perception do you need to get from them? Because you have to be more specific, because Do you want to know from them whether they're aware of an architectural institution? Yeah, yes or no? Huh? Or do you want to know if they're aware that there is a what is
Organization.
this organization, etc. And then, so those are the data, the type of data. So we establish first where to get the data and then what data to get from that. Okay,
Okay, sir.
so maybe focus on those two, and then um, oops. Okay, so I have my cat, and then you have not shown yet the flowchart. How do you handle this data once you got them? So that's pending.
Actually,
But
sir,
okay, you have a flowchart.
yes, sir.
But okay, how do you? What you can explain this?
Actually, the same explanation din, sir, was
Uh-huh.
is applied. But I'm much prepared kasi dito sa ano pa presentation ng table. That's
Oh,
why,
but your flowchart
yes,
should include the data that we will be getting from the people. The to know the perception, what data do you need? So because
actually,
here, I think this is the one to five in your table.
yes, sir.
Name of school, name of organization. So and then it does not point to methodology because this is the methodology. So it has to point to the answer or to the perception. For example, instead of methodology, this should be the perception already.
Yes, sir. Okay, okay, sir.
So, but good. But I need you to submit this to me, including the table, so that I can also try to go over it just in case I have suggestions. When I
Okay,
say
sir.
suggestion, sometimes I mean I'm going to work over it like the last time. And also, the first group, uh, I think who reported first was that Cherian.
Yes, sir.
Um, please submit to me what you presented.
Okay, sir, noted.
Okay, very good, RG. Thank you very
Thank you, sir.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Noe, are you ready, or should we proceed to the next? I guess you're not ready yet. So let's proceed to Team EBSU, Veronica and Julius. Your study is on the determinants of students not using the drafting studios in the context of the College of Architecture and Allied Discipline of Eastern Visayas State
Uh,
University.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Uh, actually, Architect Tadeos prepared the presentation, but
Mm.
he is not.
It's not around.
He he's not around, sir.
So let's.
So I am making a new one, a new presentation, kasi I cannot reach him also.
Okay.
So siguro, sir, ibala muna.
Yes, yes. Okay. We'll proceed to
Okay.
another group
Okay.
first.
Thank you, sir.
We'll come back to you. What about Team Juke? ArchiCat? Yes, the cat here. Um, Emilu and Haname on the study on the consequences of retaining the 50-year-old asbestos acoustics in the context of the Rizal Theater in Cagayan de Oro. Amilu or Hana? I can see you, Emilu. But I cannot hear you. I think you're muted. I can't hear you. Well, I still can't hear you. Okay, I think you need to fix that first, no? Your microphone. Team MAR, Megan, Duncan, Angelo, and Rhino Anthony. Study on the link between cost effectiveness, efficiency.
Good evening, sir. Yes.
Good evening.
I'm gonna present, sir, now.
Okay, sige.
Your screen. Can
Wow. Very
anybody see?
colorful.
Okay, sir, everyone, this is our process map for our proposed topic. So to get a foothold on what all of this means, primarily we were inspired by a webinar online and a blueprint article that tackled a study on material surfaces that mitigate the transmission of the coronavirus disease. So from that study, there was this chart that stated the different materials where the coronavirus lives or dies. So there was already an answer for that. I'm going to show you the next slide. So from those studies, copper was the least likely material that the coronavirus disease or any other types of bacteria can survive. So the numbers shown here, that those 4, 8, 16, those mean the number of hours that the bacteria can survive. So copper was the least material that the virus can survive. So from there comes a problem. It is very impractical to clad walls with copper because even for me, I haven't really seen that in real life. Walls that are cladded with copper. So we intend to find out what are the alternative wall cladding materials here in our country. So again, this is our process map. So beginning here with this Terminator symbol, the start of the process map, we ask the question, are there alternative wall cladding materials as opposed to the expensive ones to mitigate COVID-19 virus transmission in commercial interiors? We placed commercial interiors there as our focus instead of residential ones because our teammate architect Rino argued that people are least likely to get infected inside of their houses. They are more likely to get infected going outside. So there, commercial interiors. And then after that, we come to this square. So I researched a bit. The square, the standard square meaning in a process map is the start of it's something that where the researcher is supposed to do, the square. So it should be a verb. So mauna na, research on alternative wall cladding materials to mitigate COVID-19 virus transmission. So that's what we're going to research about. The only sources that we have available right now are the internet, and then we're going to look over so many studies online and then make some calls for certain professionals or contractors like that. And then after that, we come to a decision diamond. So here, gonna ask, are there low-cost alternatives available? So if there are, we can come to this parallelogram, this colored green parallelogram, where the data we've gathered will be in. So what we're actually, the qualities of the wall cladding materials that we're looking for are non-porous, the ones that are easily cleaned, and the ones that are seamless. So if there aren't any available, we'll just go around again. Here, if the answer is no, go around again and then look further. And then once we've had that qualitative data, we come again to this other process. So after we've gathered the certain types of materials, we are going to research on the suggested domestic retail prices of those materials here in the Philippines. So once we've had those, once we've gathered those from reliable resources, we are then gonna document them here to quantify which ones are the most cheap for the average middle income Filipino. And then once we've got that, we're gonna document them here, the data, and then we're going to draw a plausible conclusion in which materials are very least costly and less prone to virus transmission. And then at the end of the process map, once we have analyzed the data and the question has been answered, recommendations for further research may be proposed by then. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So initially I was worried about whether you need to undergo a scientific laboratory test, not to test the materials, but it seems that the data is already available and you showed it to us.
Yes,
So therefore, from that range of data that you showed, you have to select where your cutoff point. Okay, so at
yes,
what
boss.
point do you consider in your study and what you should not consider anymore? Because they don't have the same don't have the same number of hours where the virus will stay. No?
Yes, sir.
Then after that, the next thing you do is that you're going to identify the wall cladding where this type of materials are used, the commercially available cladding making use of their materials. Do you understand me? Like, for example, if you say copper, is there a commercially available copper wall cladding or wall cladding made of copper? And then if there is, so there might be, they might come in different forms. Some may be plain, some may be patterned, some may be buffed, I don't know. So you come up with that list of materials of wall claddings made of these materials.
Yes, sir.
And then the next thing you do is that you look for the prices. Of course, you cannot get the price of only one source because then you'll have to get the mean. You have to get the average price.
Yes, sir. The average for the Philippines.
So you need more, and then you also need to define when you say, because your context is Puerto Princesa, so therefore it has to be the prices available in Puerto Princesa. So it's not the Philippines. So you do not include prices from Davao or prices. And then you also does not you also include only those that can be available in Puerto Princesa, unless you
No,
want
sir,
to.
we're not from Puerto Princesa, sir.
You're not okay. So okay, so very good. So because I'm starting to get worried if there are a lot of available materials. Okay, so very good. What I wrote here also is that you have to define what you mean by low cost. Okay. Um, so the first thing that you need to define is at what point do you cut off how many hours that the virus stays is acceptable, and then the next thing you need to define is the low cost. No? What is low cost? Is even for commercial, is that something like 1,000 per square meter, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, so like that. Unless you're not too interested in unless you just wanted to present the prices and then to make the reader decide on which is simply compare the price, no, and let them decide which is low cost for them. So that's another approach. And then you also need to define what you mean by cost. Is that cost of the material only or cost of installation? So let's start with the installation, because you'll have to compare them equally. I mean fairly, no? Because for example, this material might be expensive, but the application is very cheap. And then this material might be cheap, but the application is very expensive. So in the end, how do you make sure that the comparison is fair? Okay, so therefore, when you say that the cost of the material is low, so the statement is actually reliable. The data is reliable. So you need to define that. So I guess that's it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so very good. We'll go to the next team Charmander. So Bea, Mika, Angela, Olaira May, and Danilo Dexter. Who's going to present? I see Bea here. I see Olaira here, and Mika also. Dear Charmander. Right. How do you pronounce your name?
Olaira, sir.
Olaira. And that's how people call you, Olaira, or
No, sir.
how do they call you? How should I call you?
Lai, sir, for common. Yeah. Pero
Okay.
pag pronounce sila sa name ko, it's very hard.
Okay, Lai. So go for it. A study on the effect of easing the physical distancing, on travel efficiency. So you finally focus on travel efficiency.
Yes, sir. I think you suggested many scopes, sir, but we chose travel efficiency.
Mhm.
So the first step that we're going to do is to identify the data needed for the study on the effect of easing the physical distancing in public transportation and travel efficiency in the context of the COVID-19 situation in the Philippines. Next is we have to gather the survey informations. Since it's all about traveling, we have 2 sets of survey informations which are from the commuters. I'm sorry, I added sila ko, sir.
Mhm.
And for the drivers. So for the commuters, basically it's their gender, age, occupation. Well, for age, I think it's basic na ang lumalabas sa bahay are the 21 years old or below senior class. Pero I think it was sir, binalita kagabi na I think parang okay na sila, kaya I think we're going to include them. Then for the drivers, it's the same, pero it's the age. We have to specify, I think, sa shift, sa duties, then maybe the years of driving and if they're in favor or not. Then after this, we can get the impact of COVID cases on the eased social distancing, then we can get our research data analysis.
Okay, so we're talking about public transportations only. And then, so this public transportation should be defined whether it will only be jeepneys or does it include bus, PUJs, or taxis? Are you going to include taxi?
Actually, we considered public transportation mostly, sir. Siguro we have to kuan na lang be specify public
Yes, I think
transportation. Yes.
because I think this has more bearing with the jeepneys and buses.
Yes, po.
Yeah, the rest like I don't know, habal-habal, it can also be public transportation, tricycle. So you have to specify further. And then I think this is very straightforward. You simply ask the people about what they think. But what they think specifically is, in your case, you placed here whether they are in favor or not, and then the reason. Okay, I think that's good enough, no? So we will know the reason why they are either in favor or not. Okay, very good. It's very straightforward. So thank you very much, Lai.
Thank you, sir.
We'll go to the next. Green City Architects, Ezra, Janilyn, and Christine. Someone wants to join the meeting. Ezra, Janilyn, and Christine. Who is presenting? I see Ezra here. You're the only one here. Christine is also here. Janilyn is not here. The screen does not show everyone. So who is presenting? Or are you ready?
Hello, sir.
Hello, Jing.
Hello, sir. I will present our...
Okay, we're waiting for you. This is about the relationship between the plants used in urban parks and their local environmental condition, the context of the rehabilitation of urban parks in Puerto Princesa. Okay, that's okay.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, we can see it.
So this is the flow chart that our group prepared. So our problem question is, what plants are compatible with the environmental condition of Puerto Princesa, which can be used in rehabilitating its urban parks? So to answer this question, first is to identify the existing public parks in Puerto Princesa City that needs rehabilitation. Then next is determining the historical background of existing parks, if there's any. But this is just a support to our study so that we can have more knowledge about the character of each park. Then next is determining the physical and actual condition of existing parks. And from this data, we'll be able to know the type of soil, the condition of plants, and other landscape elements like if there's still water supply para sa pandilig po. Then the next is the evaluation of plant species that were used in existing parks, as well as the plant species that were used in that each park. The next is assessment of the type of materials used or other features that exist and its impact on the overall physical environment of the parks. And lastly, determining the maintenance management system of the parks. This data will give us information on how the park is being maintained and how the maintenance system can affect the overall condition of the park. And that's all, sir.
Okay, so the maintenance aspect, I think, is more of part of the recommendation already. But then you have to focus on, okay, you identify the parks and then the types of plants being used in the parks. And then you're going to test or you're going to evaluate each of the plants that are used. So depending on the physical condition of the environment. Okay. Um, so that's another data that you need to get, the physical environment. I don't know if the microclimate of Puerto Princesa changes in each area or they're consistent, no? But you have to present the amount of rainfall, for example, the amount of sun, because these are the things. So you have to define what are these criteria that you will use to evaluate each of the plants. Okay, and how do you do that? I think when you study all the plants, there are common properties, no, on the plants. Um, so that's very important. You define the criteria on how to evaluate the plan so that you can get the data, the needed data for the um, physical environment. Um, and then, so it's either they pass or fail. No? So those who uh, pass the criteria, so becomes listed as among the plants recommended to be used. And then the uh, the maintenance is now the part of the recommendation. So since you already know the plants, so you know how to maintain them. So crucial sa inyo is the criteria to use the evaluation. Okay, very good. Thank you. So all of you, those who reported so far, and everyone else who will be reporting, please send to me the slides that you showed so that I can also go over them again. Let's go back to Team ICEE, Global Palawenyo. Are you now ready? Have you solved your technical problems? Is Jefferson here? Cindy's here. Nikki is not here. I think si Nikki ang report, no? So, what about Team EBSU? Is Julius already here? Not
Answer
yet.
to answer.
You're not ready yet. What about Amy Lou? Are you now ready with your microphone?
Hello, sir.
Ayan, I can hear you now.
I'll share my screen. Okay. Okay.
This is about the retaining the 50-year-old asbestos acoustic insulation.
Yes, sir. Wait. Share the entire. Wait. So, okay. Can the screen be seen, sir?
Yes, I can see.
Okay. Okay. So our wait. Yeah. So our study is a study on the consequences of retaining the 50-year-old asbestos acoustic insulation in the context of the Rizal Theater in Cagayan de Oro. And this is one of the visualization of Rizal Theater. And our objectives, research objectives, is to identify the consequences for retaining the asbestos acoustic insulation in Rizal Theater. So first things we find to you determine what data we're going to collect. So first is the literature review to find studies related to the asbestos insulation safety. So samples, what we have found regarding the asbestos insulation safety, and another data gathering is through the interviewing the owner, Dr. Carlos Tan, the theater keeper, and the North Point Church representatives. And then we're going to determine the effectiveness of the acoustic insulation and to identify the indoor air quality inside the Rizal Theater in their point of view. And we also will have a small scale survey to determine the user experience of North Point churchgoers. And lastly is the ocular inspection to assess the current state of the asbestos acoustic insulation in Rizal Theater. And also the documentation through photos to record the data gathered during the ocular inspection for documentation purposes. So with all those methods, we came up with this framework. First, from our research objective, we are going to identify first the studies while also developing the interview questions and the survey questionnaire. And then we're going to make the small scale survey with a questionnaire administration for the North Point churchgoers, as well as the ocular inspection and observation of the Rizal Theater, and also the interview of the owner, caretaker, and the North Point representatives. So after that, all the data will be collected, and then data analysis interpretation results would therefore be of the final report of the interpretation of the data gathered from all the processes that we actually have done. So
Uy, wow, I like the cat.
that's Duke, sir. That's the name of our mascot, sir. So so that presentation, sir. Yes, sir.
So thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think that like the ones in the ano, the group before about the wall cladding. So I was also worried whether you needed to do laboratory experiments to know the properties or about this asbestos. But it seems that you don't need to do that as long as you just go through a case study. Okay, so what you presented, for example, I think some are case studies. So you will look for facilities which still makes use of asbestos, and then how they deal with the problem, the same problem. Okay, and then when when these case studies, sometimes they present solutions, but under different conditions. So this works if the conditions are like this. So therefore, you need to research also on the whether you have that condition. That's why, for example, the activity of the users or policy. I think you also already mentioned that you can do that by interview, observing also how people go in and out of the facility, and then also the physical condition of the facility, no? Whether um, I don't know if, whether it's large enough or whether it's cold enough or hot enough. I don't know, but depends on the conditions stated in the case studies. So I think that's if you were to put that into step by step. So first is look for case studies and then look for conditions required um,
Okay.
for these case studies. And then, um, well, also the current state, no, you mentioned it. So basically, that's the approach. No? So your approach is like a case study. Um,
Okay.
the same with the wall cladding. So you present first the data which other people have researched already, and then you present it like logical argumentation presented by someone who already whom you cannot question anymore. No? So because they already made this study. Okay, thank you very much, Emilu. Very good. So now we have two more groups, the Global Palawenyo and the Team EBSO. So who wants to go first? Wala na. You cannot. Nikki,
Concern, Team
okay,
EPSO.
let's hear it. Um, wait for a while. I will just get rid of my cat. Oops. So the team on the study of the work for at home can also send me a questionnaire, no? And what are the problems in online? And my answer is the cat. Okay, Nikki? Hello. Okay, so I think Um, I think I'll go ahead with the subject matter, the lecture first, and then let's try to come back to the two groups later if they've solved their problems. Otherwise, you can present next meeting. Okay. So I'll just share my screen. Okay. So we are now going into quantitative analysis. And for this lecture, for this session, we're going again to the old boring stuff because I already asked you to view um, videos about these topics. No? Uh, we're I'm talking about descriptive or summary statistics. So they describe or summarize the data for us. So they're more very general, so that the reader can construct a mental picture of the data and the people, events, or objects they relate to. Now, so sometimes all of the research would include this, no? Because especially when you are trying to present your sample or your data, you would need to mention about the, the average, for example, the mean, and also how far you are from error, maybe. So there are two main types of descriptive statistics. These are the measures of central tendency and also measures of dispersion. Okay, so what are these? Measures of tendency, central tendency, is basically your mode, median, and mean. So we've been through this, okay? And then depending on the data, so the type of measure that you will use will depend on this type of data. If it's nominal, like it's only the objects, for example, a male, female, the cat, the dog, like that. So the mode is the best way to describe the data. If it's ordinal, so it has to follow a certain order or a certain range. So it's mode or median. The interval or ratio. So for example, the scales. So it could also mean, it could also include mean. Okay. In measures of dispersion, so these statistics describe how the data varies or is dispersed, no? From the mean, how dispersed is it? Is it nearer the mean or outside? No. So the most commonly used measures of dispersion are the range and the standard deviation. Rather than showing how the data are similar, they show how the data differs. So now I'm going to show some slides taken from a video. Now I decided to, instead of asking you to watch the video, so I just captured parts of the screen, and then I want to present it myself because I'm going to mention some things which are not mentioned in the video, or some things mentioned in the video is not necessary for you at the moment. Okay, but I forgot to put what video this is, but this is in YouTube. Okay, so I should cite my source. So measures of centrality, center, mode, median, mean. Then the other side, you have the measures of spread, range, and standard deviation. So this is how they relate. When we talk about mode, we refer to the data value that is most frequently observed. So if you have this number of people, I think these are their heights, and then the most commonly or most often mentioned, most frequent data is your mode. In this case, it's 154 cm. So it's that easy, okay? And then when we talk about median, so we're actually looking for the data which is in the middle of all the other data values in this case. But this requires that you have to arrange your data, okay, in sequence from lowest to highest. And in this case, when we count where the middle is, it's 154. So we use this formula n+1 divided by 2 to get the position of the median. So this formula is for the position, not for the median itself. Okay. So depending on what falls in that position, so we have the median. Now sometimes the position is between two data, therefore we get the average of that. No, I mean the point in between, which is 5.5. Okay, 5.5 position, in which case it is 154.5. Okay, between 154 and 155. So that's how we look for the median. The mean, we use this formula. It's actually just a summation of all data values divided by the total number of data values. Okay. This is the most used formula, although you're not using the formula as written here, no? But the process, you keep on getting the average. Okay. With these numbers given here, where n, or the number of data, is 10, so you add all of those numbers and then divide it by 10. So this is x bar. No? That's how you call it, x bar. And then you get 165.6, which is the mean of all these numbers. Okay. Now, in terms of dispersion, measures of spread, range is simply your maximum and minimum, or the other way around. So in this case, the maximum is 196, minimum is 139. So that's your range. In standard deviation, you use this formula. Standard deviation is represented by a small letter s. It's equal to the square root of the summation of xi minus x bar squared all over n minus 1. So x is here, each data, okay? And then x bar is the means that we computed. Therefore, you have to compute for that first. So you compute for that. So here's a table that shows you how it's computed. Then we computed earlier, x bar is 15.4, given this data, and then you deduct that from each of the data here. 10 minus 15.4 is negative 5.4, 12 minus 15.4, so 16 minus 15.4, so you get this. And then once you get all the values here, you square them, okay? So when you square them, so you get the values. And then you add all of them, there's 75.2, so they replace the quotation equation on the upper part of this fraction. And then there are 5 data, minus 1, so that's 4, so it's 75.2 over 4, and then square root of the difference of the quotient. Okay, so that's how you solve it. So I forgot to put the final answer. So standard deviation simply tells you how close the data, all the data are from the mean. So if the value of s is small, therefore they're very close, which means you have lesser error. Okay, but then if they are more dispersed because your s is high, so they are farther apart. Okay. Now, what happens if you're given this data? No, 1, 1, 0, 1. Okay, so many. So find the mean, median, and mode for the following collection of responses to the question. So you're about to embark on a survey. Most of you will be doing survey, and depending on how many survey questionnaires you filled out and how many responses you get, so you'll be confronted with a lot of data, and hopefully a lot, because if there are very few, it's no challenge. No, also the amount of data, the reliability might be questioned also. The question was, how many parking tickets have you received this semester? So I think these are given to students, and then so some did not receive any. There are as many as 5. I think there's 6 or 5. So we cannot tell, no, with just this data. Therefore, you have to arrange them. So all the zeros, all the 1s, 2s, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so that's better, no? But then we don't start from there. So we have to count how many zeros, how many 1s, how many 2s, 3, 4, and 5. So we call that frequency. Okay, so the 0 appears 27 times, 1 appears 96, 2 appears 58, 3 appears 54, 4 appears 18 times, and 5 appears 7 times. So we can already tell which is the mode. 1 is the mode because it appears the most number of times. And then this is now the frequency table. These are the values, and then how many times it is mentioned in the data set. Okay. To get the mode, well, I already mentioned it earlier. So we simply look for the highest number among the frequency, and that's 1. So the mode is 1. To get the mean, so we make another table here because we get the number of data, which is the total number of frequency, in which case this is 260, and then multiply the value with the frequency, and you get the mean. Well, to get the mean, you get the S, and then you divide that by this, you get the mean. Okay, so this is the S is the sum of the data points found by adding all of the subtotals formed by multiplying a value by its associated frequency. Okay, so don't worry if I'm going too fast. I'm going to share my slides anyway, and then you also will be referring to this because I'm giving you a bring home quiz, which you need to finish within the week. To get the median, you only need to get the cumulative frequency, meaning to say you keep on adding until you get all the total number. So 27 plus 96 is 123 plus 58, 181, etc. And then you divide this by 2, plus 1, no? N plus 1 divided by 2, we get the position that we need. The position that we need is 130.5. So we look for where does 130.5 come in. So it goes after 123. So 130.5 is within this range in number 2. Therefore, so our median is 2. Okay, so I hope you get that. And what's this? So very good. So that's for the lecture now, and then okay. So I've stopped sharing, no, already. As I mentioned earlier, after this, I'm going to publish a quiz in Canvas. Okay, so I hope everyone has access to Canvas. And then you're going to submit it maybe until Monday. You have until Monday. And then on Monday, I'm going to publish another quiz, more of a homework, okay, which you will submit on Thursday. So the first quiz is about the measures of central tendency, and then the second is about dispersion. Dispersion, you need to do some writing. Therefore, I cannot give it as a quiz because in quiz it's multiple choice, all of them, but you have to finish it in one sitting. Okay, the dispersion you cannot finish in one sitting. Probably takes longer, so you might need to work on it at different times. So, any questions so far? Okay. Next, we will be talking next week. We'll be talking about inferential statistics already, and we will talk first about the samples. But let me see. Before we end, Veronica, are you ready to present, or or would you prefer to present next meeting?
Next meeting na lang.
Next meeting na lang. What about you, Nikki? Next meeting na lang, kay gutom na ko. I think all of us. Okay, so I guess that's it for now. No? Again, don't forget to send me the materials that you showed so that I can comment on it, or I can process it more and probably give you suggestion on how it should be presented. Okay, so but thank you very much for your effort in making the assignment. So if there's no other questions, so I have to say good evening and then goodbye. Okay.
Bye, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.